Change is coming to Washington in 2015. Republicans will control the House and Senate for the first time in 8 years. They will have their largest House majority in more than 75 years. The outgoing Congress managed to agree on a spending bill to keep the government running, but a recent Pew survey suggests Americans are not cheerful about the future. Only 20% believe President Obama and Republican leaders will make significant progress on the country's biggest problems. 2015 will also be the year of presidential hopes and dreams. Former Governor Jeb Bush is the first to say he's interested in running for the White House.
With us are CBS News political director John Dickerson, our congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes, and CBS News contributor Peggy Noonan, a columnist for the Wall Street Journal. Welcome. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Let me begin with the spending bill that the Congress passed. What lessons are there from that about what might be happening in the new Congress?
I think we got a couple of big clues about how things are going to go down. First of all, Republicans, even though they don't yet control both the House and the Senate, are already feeling their oats. They slipped in a few big priorities at the last minute, and Democrats then had a big choice to make. They kind of came down into two camps. You had one camp of Democrats saying, look, we don't love this, but it's going to get even worse in the new year, so we have to just go ahead and take this deal. Then you had other Democrats, like Nancy Pelosi, saying, no, we've got to take a stand because it is only going to get worse for us in the new year, and we have to show them now that we have limits and we won't get pushed around. In the end, the White House and that wing of the Democratic Party won, but I think you can see going forward that it's not just going to be Republicans against Democrats, but you're going to have two different camps of Democrats trying to figure out what the strategy is.
But specifically on what issues might there be compromise?
Well, Republicans and Democrats say they'd love to compromise on tax reform, for example, both individual and corporate tax reform. Leader McConnell, the Republican who will be heading up the Senate, and the president have both said they want to work together on trade. The big question is, can they? Because at the same time that everyone is singing Kumbaya and saying they want to work together, Republicans have a whole host of issues that they're going to want to work on now that they control all of Congress.
One of the questions is how everybody's going to be able to handle the inevitable clashes. Can there be two tracks? Can people operate and get a deal done like the spending bill at the end of last year, where there's a lot of anger, a lot of speeches, a lot of drama, but can they still do business? Because the other track is going to be chaos. There's going to be bill after bill passed by Republicans, sent to the president, which the president will then veto. And will people be able to sort of handle that kind of fighting back and forth? Or will it just shut everything down and everybody will talk about how nothing gets done?
But Kumbaya is such a catchy ditty until you get sick of it when you're in camp. But this will be the first time for the president that both chambers are occupied by the other party. Do you think he's going to have to change his strategy or change his approach?
Well, we'll see. This month, in 2015, so many interesting things are going to happen. But one is in late January, a State of the Union from the President of the United States, who, for the first time in 6 years, has seen his attitude in relation to his Congress change. He was always winner guy, and they were kind of loser guys. He is now on losing strain guy, and they are on winning strain guy. So that makes you ask, okay, how does that affect his tone? How does that affect his approach when he says, as all presidents do, we have to work together? Will he really be meaning it? And will the Congress, will Mitch McConnell and John Boehner be nodding like yes? One of the things I thought was so interesting in the past month was that in Washington, it seemed like the old days. The president was on the phone with the congressman, twisting his arm, saying, I really need you on this one. And the speaker was doing this, and Republicans were talking to Democrats. I'm telling you, it was like the old days. I loved it.
And some
I loved seeing it.
Some Democrats were picking up the phone saying, who? Because they hadn't heard from the president for so many years.
Barack what?
Yeah.
Well, nothing focuses the mind like a hanging. It was the government shutdown.
Yes.
So there won't be that. There won't be that hanging right away in January.
But is there an indication that the president, who has had a bad year, learned some lessons from it and is willing to change?
Well, I think
that's the question. Sorry to jump in there, John. In the past, every 2 years, I've thought, the president's going to absorb a lot from this one. He's going to change his ways. He has never changed his ways. We will see if 2014 was enough of a sock in the jaw to make him reconsider.
But you all have sources. What are you hearing, John?
Well, here's what they're trying to do, and we saw it at the end of 2015. The president is trying to kind of dance with the ones who brung him. So we saw 5 million undocumented workers. The deportation rules changed on those. So that's dealing the minorities that were part of his coalition. He's doing a lot on the Environmental Protection Agency through executive orders to speak to those voters who saw him as the one who might reverse the climate change that they believe is ruining the planet. So you've seen him trying to do as much as he possibly can. Well, every time he does that, which is a part of his legacy, a part of the grand narrative of his presidency, he irritates those Republicans. And one thing we'll look for in the beginning of the year is how much are Republicans going to go right after him on this immigration move? How much will they stop everything and make that a big fight? If that fight continues, it boxes out the rest of what happens.
It will be an interesting fight to have, just as we're starting to hear many of these people from the Democratic and Republican side say, hey, I'm thinking about running for president, and perhaps some announcements. I mean, we're going to be focused for the most part on who's going to be running for president.
And that's going to make things on Capitol Hill tricky, too, because you have so many members of Congress who are considering running, and they're going to be looking to assert themselves. They're going to be going up against their own leadership time and time again. You've got so many Republicans, especially in Congress.
I know.
You've got Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, I mean, who are already combative with their leaders, can already be a thorn in their leader's side, and now they're going to be looking to set themselves apart and also to say, I'm not a creature of Washington. And so when you've got party leadership trying to establish one track, and then you've got a whole bunch of very prominent members who are in some ways the standard bearers of their party, especially going forward, saying, no, I don't agree with that, we should go this other way, it really makes things very tricky.
Well, on the Democratic side, presidents usually struggle against the lame duck label, right? They spend their last 2 years struggling. Barack Obama, his aides will tell you, the way he cements his legacy is if a Democrat gets elected. And that's looking, if Hillary Clinton runs, she's the odds-on favorite, which means he will have to get up at some point and put on the lame duck suit because he has to get out of her way. And he will have to do that of his own volition because he thinks that his legacy is cemented by her re-election. And that's a tricky thing for a president to have to do when your instinct is to struggle against it. But if he's out there making news, at some point the news he makes detracts from her candidacy.
One last question. If the president is intent on adding to his legacy, where might he try to find that? And what might he do?
I'd say tax reform. I mean, tax reform is huge, very challenging, and requires so much trust from both sides. You're really kind of jumping off a cliff there when you start talking about getting rid of a lot of loopholes. You have to sort of know that the other side is going to jump with you. Both sides have been saying for years they want to do it. They know that our tax code makes us incredibly uncompetitive. If they could do it, it would really be a major milestone.
It's a huge issue. You could get both parties on it. If it went to the president, he did not veto, he signed. Something worked, it would be huge, I think.
And what are the options and opportunities in foreign policy?
I don't know if he's got it. I mean, Iran is obviously the biggest one. If there is a deal on Iran, but of course, the way we see everything in foreign policy sorted, and there used to be a consensus on foreign policy long ago, you see things sorted in partisanship now. Any deal the president gets from the right, the immediate claim is going to be that he sold out to the Iranians. So it will be another debate, not necessarily a clear legacy item.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it turns out, because right now the approval ratings are down, but they say history will show a different side of Barack Obama. It'll be interesting to see if that bears out, that we'll have different memories of him.
I have to end it there. Thank you, John. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Peggy.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, you look good after a late night out, guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.